Welcome to the Inspiration Contagion podcast, where we spread inspiration one story at a time. I am your host, Holly Jean Jackson. Each episode spotlights and interviews one transformational leader, their stories, and their advice for how you too can lead yourself and others through inspiration. If you are a visionary seeking to uplevel your leadership skills, then this is the podcast for you. I invite you today to spread inspiration like a contagion. Welcome to the Inspiration Contagion movement. Welcome to episode 30 of the Inspiration Contagion podcast. Today's show is also being recorded, so if you'd like to watch on YouTube, please look at the show notes for the YouTube link to view instead. Today, I'm welcoming guest Gunnar Simonsen. Gunnar has spent the better part of the past decade coaching on best practices for social media. He has taken his message to places such as Hong Kong, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Kenya, Dubai, and Lebanon, as well as various cities across the United States and Canada. Gunnar's unique perspective on social media makes his approach accessible to both experienced and novice users alike. Over the years, his clients have organically reached hundreds of millions of people by using social media to effectively share their stories. Previously, Gunnar ran a vast array of businesses for Portland businessman Robert Pamplin. These businesses range from a regional chain of bookstores, gourmet food, and gift chain wine tasting cafes, and a motel in a ghost town. Welcome, Gunnar.
How you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Just great to be here. And I just always chuckle when you get to that last part about the ghost town. It was quite the experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm sure we'll get into that as we talk about some of your stories and experiences.
Sure.
So with that, why don't you share a little bit more with our audience today about your background and who you are?
Oh, thank you again. Thanks for having me on. I'm just honored to be here. Just a quick little snapshot of where I'm at today. I just turned 50 in April and got married on the same day. And so it was interesting during this COVID time when we're recording this. And so just newly married, just turned 50, and I've been spending my time these days really focusing on creating content and storytelling for organizations, as well as just pursuing a life of just fitness and health. But before that, as you alluded to, just had the wonderful opportunity to travel around the world and share on social media tactics and strategies, and as well as drawing from my experience in running businesses, even a hotel at a ghost town. And so it's a true story, and it is something that I still carry with me to this day, just many lessons.
Yeah, and since we have a lot of people that are entrepreneurs or business owners that listen to the show, what are maybe 3 of your ninja tips or tricks for social media that you could share?
I think for me, it's always about being you, be yourself, be open, be honest. People buy from people. I think there's a lot of data out there that says that, we don't generally trust, traditional marketing or advertising as much anymore as word of mouth. So I think just being yourself, being clear with your message, it's like a game of telephone. Where it's just you sit in this circle and, we start with orange, and somehow it comes back as like Harley Davidson motorcycle. It's so being clear with your message, writing it clear on a tablet so that a runner can take it and run with it. Be yourself, be clear, and just be your audience. Go where your audience is. Wayne Gretzky, didn't go where the puck was. He went where the puck was going. And I think just be your audience, be there with them, be empathetic. It may not always be brand specific, but it is audience centric. Be where they are. I think those are 3 things that it's easy to get mission drift on social media and get kind of going this way or that way as a society, culture, things happen, but just, run your race.
I love that. And also because I just want to make sure we cover it, can you tell us a little bit more about how you turn things around in the ghost town?
Yeah. Well, it was really a combination of 4 businesses that I was running at the time for a local businessman that owns tons of businesses, has like 7 earned master degrees, It was worth a lot of money, very eccentric and just different types of businesses. And I started out working at one of his bookstores. He had a chain of bookstores, a chain of gourmet food and gift, radio stations, and everything. And I started off working at one of the bookstores, and they had offered me $6.25 an hour for the job.
Wow.
And being the savvy negotiator that I was, I said, "Hey, look, if you can give me $6.50 an hour, I'm all yours." So give me a quarter more, I'm in. And they gave me a quarter more. I started at $6.50 an hour working in this one bookstore, and they had a chain of stores throughout the Northwest, based in Portland. 10 years later, I was promoted to run the company, as well as a gourmet food and gift chain of stores. They own some farms, a wine tasting restaurants, and a motel in a ghost town. And so that led to that, and it was an incredible experience. The ghost town, I remember when they had offered me the job. I think they just told me I was going to take the job on. I always remember, true story. I mean, we're driving there for the first time, and they're like, "You're going to have a hard time finding people to work for you here. There's," and I think it's a ghost town, and they said, "Look, there's 19 people that live in the town, and we've already fired 15 of them." And then they paused and they said, "Including the mayor." And I'm just thinking, okay, this is going to be interesting. But, I tell you, I think, starting out at the bottom and just learning your way through it, you just develop, I hope, just a develop of empathy for people, and you just develop an understanding of people around you and the roles that you have. And I think that allows you to be able to be accessible, to
Yeah.
connect with people on the front lines. Too much in leadership, I think we're detached. And I think just being involved and engaged with people that are maybe part-timers on a Thursday night or what have you, just be engaged with them and get to know who they are. Don't be so detached, be accessible. Those are the things that really helped us really get to a place, I think, and with a great team around me that was so much better at what they did than anything I could ever do. Together, we were able to have some success. The bookstore chain had lost millions of dollars, millions. It never had a profitable year. 2 years later, after we put the team together, we turned a profit. And it was interesting how it was that positive attitude. We had a great team. And it really came down to taking the margins from 37 to 42%. Not much, but that's all it takes.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. And I have to say, between the social media ninja tips and what you just shared in that story, it seems to me like a lot of your ninja skills are around connection and empathy and really understanding people, including your audience as well as your staff, which that's how you create these amazing customer experiences to get those margins up. So it's a really powerful skill that you have that can be pretty difficult to teach, those softer skills to other folks. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely lessons learned. I will tell you that. I learned a lot of lessons, through doing it the other way and just kind of going against the grain. But, over time, if we just have a humble heart and you're willing, rising tide lifts all boats.
I love that. Rising tide lifts all boats. That's beautiful. So, since you're on the Inspiration Contagion podcast, what makes you an inspirational leader, or what's your secret sauce?
I think, boy, these were great questions, by the way. Truth be told, I'm still chewing on, some of the responses because, I'm in a place in life where I think things have shifted. I think Richard Rohr writes in his book, Falling Forward, that the first half of life, we write the text, the second half, we write the commentary. And so I look at inspiration, I look at success differently now than when I did, I had taken on those businesses. I was 34 years old when I was given all those opportunities to run those businesses. And so for me, inspiration, what makes me a leader in that way, if I would suppose people would answer that by saying I'm an encourager. I connect with people. I'm accessible. I'm empathetic. Those are things that are core to me. I believe my assignment while I walk throughout life is to encourage people, to walk in that, to help people believe that they're not alone, that they can achieve, they can step out of their self-limiting beliefs and get to that next place. And so those are things that I just believe are just core to me, and it's just what I do. And as I've grown in life, I begin to accept that in a healthy way, and to be able to leverage that in a way, not in a bad way, but in a leverage it in a way to really pour into people and to pour into others, to make people feel important, and shine the light on them. Those things, coupled with just a few mantras that have been given to me over the years, that have helped. I read a book one time in the midst of all that business that was going on all those years ago, called "The One Thing You Need to Know" by Marcus Buckingham. And in it was coined a phrase that changed everything for me. It was, clarity is the antidote to anxiety.
Hmm.
And to me, that was so critical as a leader. And to be inspired, I got to have clarity, because if there's not clarity, there's anxiety. And what does that do? That goes, productivity, morale, everything. I had people would come to me and I would say, look, and I wanted to empower them as well and say, look, if they came to me and I said, I got a clarity question. That told me to stop everything, because that meant they had anxiety. And so I wanted to empower people to come to me in such a way and then I would also say, hey, don't come to me with questions, come to me with answers, come to me with solutions. It's not just about me. I want to empower you.
I love that. When I was working in corporate America and managing a team, one of my biggest pet peeves would be people coming to me with problems and no ideas on how to solve it. And it's really hard, especially when you're kind of in roles like we are, to not just jump in and start solving the problem
Yeah.
for your staff. But it's really important, like you said, to empower them by allowing them the space to start brainstorming those. That doesn't mean you're not supporting them, but giving them the space to start ideating their own thoughts on those solutions versus relying on you, because they'll never grow into that next position and they'll never feel empowered or confident to share their ideas unless we allow them that space as leaders to do that. So I think that's really beautiful. I also really love that quote, that clarity is the antidote to anxiety. I had to write that down. I completely agree. When I'm working with clients, a lot of times that they're expressing and experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety and overwhelm, it's because they're really unclear. And oftentimes they're hiring a coach or a guide or a mentor for them to get focused.
Yeah.
And that's really around clarity. It's like, okay, I've got 20 directions I could go, and I'm not sure which way I should go.
Yeah.
And so that's where people like you and I come in and we're saying, this is the one thing you should focus on today versus 20, because that's too much.
Yeah. And it's an interesting journey to go down that path, because, on one hand, you may find yourself facing some self-limiting beliefs that have caused anxiety. In other hands, and just in a work environment, it might be just a lack of clarity of expectation and training and the resources and tools. For me, it starts at leadership, and are we cultivating that type of a culture of growth and promoting that? And it's an interesting journey. I'm sure we'll get more into that as we go through our time today. But I will say also, when you have that empowerment, you see this yourself, when you have that kind of a culture, when you're empowering your team to come to you with solutions and answers rather than just questions all the time, boy, what does that do to the culture? What does that do to morale when people feel empowered? It's not always, well, if I paid you more, would you work harder? What if I poured into you? What if we created a culture where you're growing and you have a sense of satisfaction in what you're doing? That can really play into the culture. Because so many times in working with teams and stuff, it was always like, it was disgruntled, well, I'll just pay them more and that's going to go away. Not always the case. Quite frankly, quite not always the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this has actually come up a few times in conversations recently where when we'll talk later about success, but a lot of how people define success has nothing to do with financial gain. And so, like you just shared, there's a softer evaluation to success and to pouring into people.
Yeah.
And so something that, for people listening that are in careers or they're working in teams, one thing you want to evaluate, especially given the economic stress today, is how can you pour into your team in other ways? How can you encourage them and support them and help them learn and grow and develop their skills? So instead of just looking at the financial component, it's really important, like you said, culturally, to have this emphasis on growth, development, and helping people get clear on what success looks like for them as an individual at the organization.
100%. As you know, I mean, boy, right now, I mean, this is like the biggest pivot and we've seen in our lifetime, and we'll probably see in our lifetime with businesses and, and just saying, hey, we're finding more efficiencies working remote, and not being on that team. When you're losing that personal connection face to face, how do we continue to grow and inspire and pour into when we're not together? And there's so many things on the table right now. I've been working with a friend of mine who just launched an Amazon delivery business. You see Amazon trucks everywhere right now. And so he just got some trucks, started this delivery business, and we're working on some things together right now of like, how do we take our drivers and not just treat them as just delivery drivers, but as heartbeats, people, part of society, and how do we pour into them and just give them a sense of satisfaction in life and growth. And it's a big pivot right now, and there's so many things that that are going to impact the bottom line than we maybe previously thought.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that when I reflect back on my experiences working for others, the bosses that poured the most into me and encouraged me the most and looked at me as, like you just said, a heartbeat and a human versus just a number, I felt more loyal, more encouraged, more excited, and I gave more of myself. So it wasn't necessarily the money. So that's very cool that you're doing that and helping your friend make sure that they're building that type of culture.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
an honor.
Yeah. So what does inspiration mean to you?
This is where I've been really spending a lot of time, especially this last week, just thinking long and hard. Again, as I was saying earlier, Richard Rohr saying the first half of life is you write the text, the second half you write the commentary, and just reflective. I mean, one of the notes that I wrote down to me is inspiration means to me something seen in the shadows of one who has and is humbly done as they speak. I mean, I've just been doing a lot of reading right now, a lot of people with motivational and inspiration, get the energy up, the hands moving, we're talking, we're doing all that. But there's something about change and transformation in someone's life that when it truly happens, it has a way of going up ahead of you on the road and speaking on your behalf. I mean, they've done it before. They can do it. I can do it, and I've spent a lot of time just this year alone reading different books really over the last few years of just people that have done it, that show me how to dig deeper, that if they can do it, I can do it. Again, rising tide lifts all boats and we can learn from each other. So that's inspiration for me. I just am looking for in my own life, the expectation I have of myself is what people see in the wake of my actions. Is that what's moving the needle? Or am I still trying to convince you that I'm inspiring or I'm relevant or whatever? I want to live it.
Yeah, I think this is really important today is that authenticity and walking the talk of what you're sharing. And like you said in your ninja tips on social media, to be you and be authentic. It's so easy to get caught up in looking at advice from other people and taking that on, even though it's not aligned with who you are.
Yeah.
So for listeners, I would also encourage you to really walk the talk of what business you're trying to grow or what brand or whatever you're trying to build in your career, and be authentic and really just check in if it aligns, because like you just shared, you're reading a lot of things, and I think a lot of people are tapping into these resources, but then they're feeling compare and despair or overwhelm, and the goal is not to feel that, but choose one thing that resonates with you and start implementing that and walk the talk and stop trying to convince people, but show them through the actions that you're taking. So I love that response.
100% too. I mean, I think the power of knowing self and knowing your identity, not only just as a person, but just as your business. I mean, great video. We've all probably seen it a million times. The Simon Sinek is, what's your why? And I think absolutely so powerful. For me, what's gone on the last few years is that I've began to ask a different question, and that's who's your who? It sounds like Dr. Seuss, right? Who's your who? But I believe, as long as your why is tethered to a false sense of your who, you're never going to find lasting satisfaction. It's so easy to compare ourselves or live in accordance to someone else's why, or to someone else's lifestyle, or to someone else's fill in the blank. But who's your who? When we can find that, just go and go and go and go, rinse and repeat, walk in that identity. It's too easy to get mission drift because, it's a fear of missing out or this or that. But as long as our why is tethered to a false sense of our who, we will never find lasting satisfaction. So I think that's so critical.
Yeah, and this goes back to your clarity pillar and how without clarity you experience anxiety. When
Yeah.
you don't know who you are and you don't know what your why is, it's very easy to feel anxious and to feel desperate. And so it really is about doing that self-reflection and really understanding who you are and growing as a person, which takes a lot of time. It takes a lifetime. We're continuously doing this every day.
It takes a lot of lifetime, a lot of surrender, but just, the power of knowing yourself too, especially in this day and age. If you're a business owner and you're watching or listening to this episode here, there's obviously so many people out of work and looking for work, and if we're not tethered and anchored to who we are and our DNA and our identity as a business or whatever, it's easy to become desperate. When desperate employers hire desperate candidates, it just never really plays out well. Anchor yourself in your identity now more than ever. That means you might need to pivot a little bit and with the times and what that looks like, but just know yourself, be confident in it. You have something that the world needs, and you've got something that they're going to want to work with you and for you, but give them clarity, know yourself. Don't get stuck in the, I'm desperate. I need to fill. Do your due diligence.
Yeah, I love that. Anchor in who you are and your why. Very powerful words, and we're just early into the interview. So, how do you define success for yourself, and how did you arrive at this definition?
Well, it's interesting that you when we talk about that, it's something that I've been reading a lot, and I've been reading a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits, and
Love that book.
it just keeps on showing up on the radar. I thought, I'm going to buy the book, I'm going to read it, and it has absolutely been an incredible read so far. I'm not rushing through it. I'm just spending a lot of time reflecting. And I love a quote in the book that says, "Success is the product of daily habits, not once in a lifetime transformations." And I can look back in my life and when I've seen success, and we'll talk a little bit now about how I now define success versus then. It was those times when there were those daily habits and not that once in a lifetime transformation where I'm just swinging for the bleachers, but those daily, I got locked on a focus, a goal, or where I wanted to go, and we just started going after it. We just, day after day, the mantra is to keep moving forward. And that book has been really, really good for me in helping me to really kind of think about, what does success look like? When has it been times in my life when I've seen success? Now, at 50, I've gone through, and we'll get into the transformation, my story here shortly, but it's completely changed. Success for me and how I define it is so much different than just that mountaintop achievement. I have some notes here. I woke up this morning, matter of fact, just thinking about it. I went to bed thinking about today. I woke up thinking about today, and for where I'm at in life, success for me is walking in my God-given purpose, anchored by my God-gifted contentment. That I found peace in life, and I found who I am and what I'm to bring and offer to this life. And I have peace in that. That's enough. And if I can just do that on a daily basis, that's success to me. Been blessed to be able to do business and the businesses of turning them around from millions of losses to whatever with a team. Been blessed to be able to travel around the world and speak and do all of those things. But to be honest, where I'm at today, what success looks like is a text message from my 22-year-old daughter in Texas saying, Dad, I'm so proud of you for who you are and who you've become. That is success to me. Waking up in the morning, as I do every single day with my wife, and we read the Bible, we pray, and we work out. I'm doing these exercises. I had back surgery when I was 31 years old. And I almost had back surgery again a few years later. Then it was chronic pain for years. I'm now in the best shape of my life, and I'm able to do these exercises that I never thought was possible. That's success to me. Walking in my purpose, encouraging people, helping people feel loved and know that they are loved, that they matter. That's success to me. If I can just focus on that, I just believe the good will come in the other areas of my life.
I love that. And I almost got a little teary when you shared the text message from your daughter, because it's really powerful. It really is about being peaceful in this life and having clarity on your identity, having clarity on the gifts that you have, having those powerful, profound connections with the people you love the most. And it's not easy in the world that we live in with social media and all these other things to remain peaceful. So while it sounds so simple and so lovely, it is quite difficult to get to where Gunnar is sharing the success track that he's reached at 50. So I'm kind of curious, is there a tip you'd provide younger people that are on that journey and they're not feeling peaceful about where they are?
That's always a question that we have as we get into some of the conversation about, community and mentoring. I've spent the last 3 years, really the last 3 years of my life has seen the greatest amount of change in my life personally. I mean, everything about my life is different today than where I was 3 years ago. And part of that has been so critical is I've had just an amazing opportunity to be in a small group with these three young men in their late 20s, all from Hawaii. And then there's me, this older guy, and we just have gone on this journey together. And, we just talk about, being humble. One of the things that I've picked up over time and just books that I've read is, how often we take for granted everything that was never guaranteed, including that next breath. Life is short, be humble. Let's meet people where they are. We can get everybody into these frozen perceptions on social media, and we can battle it out and duke it out. Know yourself, be humble, and life is short, not every hill is worth dying on. And we'll get into that here shortly as well.
I love that. That's really great advice. Be humble and really grateful for the things in your life that we take for granted so easily. And that's so relevant today. So
But
relevant.
it's hard not to at times, but for me, I just know the gifts that I've been given to be even here in front of you today is a gift. And I just have a deep appreciation for it. I've been humbled in life, made a lot of bad choices, mistakes, as we all do. But success, I think, is just as much what we do with those failures and those bad choices as we do when we get to the mountaintop with achievement. It's like when we fail, we make bad choices, we make mistakes or whatever else, we tend to beat ourselves up and we keep ourselves there. We become resigned. This is just the way the life is going to be. We're going to define ourselves by that at the end of the game. No, it's only halftime. Success, just as much as what we do with our failures as what we
Yeah.
do with our wins.
Yeah. Don't become a victim to those challenges or obstacles. Don't let
Yeah.
them get in the way. And that's a perfect segue to my next question.
Yeah.
So, what challenges or obstacles did you face along your journey to success?
I think the biggest obstacle for me, and one of the threads, I've been talking a lot about this with my wife and what she does, and just doing a lot of coaching and stuff, is just how obstacles are just another way of saying opportunities. You can just step away from the ledge of just the moment sometimes and now the emotional, and just step back and see it for what it is. That obstacle is going to make me stronger. It's going to make me wiser. It's going to make me smarter. And hopefully it's going to make me humbler. when I look at it as opportunities. For me, the biggest ones that I have faced over time, Gunnar means warrior. But for years, Holly, I was a worrier. Just one letter, a vowel, warrior, but I was a worrier. And I had self-limiting beliefs. Those were my biggest obstacles from keeping me from a life of just beginning to tap where the sky is no longer the limit. Those are the biggest obstacles I think we all face. We can always point to this tangible object or this tangible object, but we've got to look within and say, you know what, all things are possible. I didn't think I could be doing any of this stuff now, or go on a treadmill or run 7 miles or work out. Never possible. And so the self-limiting beliefs, and going from believing that my name meant worrier to believing that it means warrior.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the reframe of obstacles and challenges to opportunities. I completely agree. When we, depending on how we react to those obstacles, if we take the right high road and we look at it as an opportunity, it's so much easier, and we learn from it, we grow and we gain. And it might not be fun in the moment, but we get through it. And there's so much freedom in facing those fears and obstacles because we've been through it. And that's how we build our self-confidence. And that's how we stay on track. I also love the change and of limiting belief from worrier to warrior. And I feel like this applies to so many people today. We have these limiting beliefs that we're not even consciously aware of. Sometimes it's around money. Sometimes it's around capability. Sometimes, like you just said, in the health space, it's around what we believe about our own bodies and our own health. And I love that you're sharing that you've been able to break through that. And I know so many of my clients and myself have been able to break through that. So anybody who's listening and you feel or believe that you can't do something because of a physical thing or anything, just erase that. Just start believing that you can, because it's really that simple to start taking action.
Well, I mean, oftentimes, when adversity rises up, I mean, it's so easy to fight or flight, and we have these coping mechanisms that we've developed over time because perhaps we've been hurt or what have you over time. And they were to protect us. We have these coping mechanisms and they become blind spots over time, and that stunts growth. And if we can get ourselves to a place of moving beyond fight or flight, but instead to lean in on those moments and learn from them, to take a look at within, we can begin to identify blind spots. We can begin to understand ourselves with our coping mechanisms. When we can start locking and loading on that and begin to take those, remove those self-limiting beliefs and remove those blind spots and expose them in our lives, we will see exponential growth.
Yeah. And they say that, in the Buddhist tradition, when we experience these strong reactions to things, it's considered called shenpa. And so when that happens and you find something really triggering in a current event, it's typically related to most likely a limiting belief or a previous experience that you haven't processed.
Yeah.
And so the better result of that is to try to step outside of yourself and be an objective viewer before reacting, which is not easy to do, but
It's funny you say that. When I just started dating my now wife, for years I was scared to death of heights. It's like skydiving, never, no way. And we were on a hike, early on, and she's like, would you ever skydive? And I was like, immediately, nope. Then I stopped and I had to freeze in that moment. And I said, wait a minute now, hold on, G. That's not who you are anymore. And I kind of like this girl. So yeah, I would consider it. 10 minutes later, she's like, well, will you jump out of a plane with me this year? And I'm like, okay. And then she did the unthinkable, and she made me pinky promise her. But months later, at the end of September of last year, we jumped out of a plane from 14,000 feet up in the air, and fear never arrived on the scene as I expected it would. And it was unbelievable. The sky is no longer the limit. You can go from warrior to warrior.
I love that. And I've also been skydiving, and
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a fear of heights as
Mhm.
well, but it is such an amazing experience, that free fall. And then even once you have, you're kind of floating down to the ground,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
pretty amazing. So that's
It is.
really awesome. Good for you for facing that
It's
fear.
fun. It's incredible.
Yeah. So what is a story of inspiration that you're known for?
You know, on August 19th, 2017, I ended up in the ER, and it was some heart stuff. I put it off for a few weeks, and I finally, being brought up in my home, it's like pain. What's that? You just push through it. But I ended up going and sent me to the ER, and fortunately, things were okay. There was like extra, arrhythmia and stuff, but it was what I needed. It was a wake up call for me. I was severely overweight. You can never outrun on the outside what you're battling on the inside. It always metastasizes itself one way or the other. I was miserable. I was stuck. I was wounded. I was a stress eater, and I just began the journey. So the journey of the journey of 1,000. This begins with one. And I began the journey. It was just me and my doctor. I didn't tell a lot of people about it, and I said, "Now's my time. I've got to get it together." And I knew that I had to not only get active outwardly, I had to get surrendered inwardly. I had to do the work that was going to make this sustainable, which was going to lead, Lord willing, to transformation. And so I began to walk more. I began to I realized right off the bat that I'm going to sabotage any of my efforts because I'm a stress eater. So I need to figure out why I'm a stress eater. And so I began the work of that journey. It was just I ended up walking out of that hospital with several goals in place. One of them was to get in shape, stay in shape, get my finances in order, do meaningful work, you know, serve the community. And I just began the journey. I was walking, met with a doctor. He says, "I want you to try running." I'm thinking, "You're crazy. I've had back surgery, my discs, chronic pain, all of that." He says, "I want you to try it." And then at the same time was going to counseling and beginning to just go deep on what was going on, what was causing me to be a stress eater. Over time, from about the spring of that year to probably about a year or so later, I dropped about 100 pounds. It was never a waistline thing. It was it was a hurt thing, a pain thing, a sorrow thing, and stuff that I had been battling for years and stuff. And I didn't have a sense of my identity. And I just felt like it had been hijacked by hurts and pains in my life. And but we began to run, began to identify those things that caused me to stress eat, began to eat healthier, walking, believing about myself, who I really was meant to be on planet Earth. And a friend of mine, they asked me one time, they said, "Gunnar, how did you do it? How did you get through this time and lose all this weight and keep it off?" And I said, "Well, what do you think?" And they said, "Determination?" I said, "No, it was forgiveness." And there's a great quote that I took with me that entire year by a mystic from, I think, the 13th or 14th century, Meister Eckhart, that says, "The soul does not grow by addition, but by subtraction." I had to begin to travel light on the inside if I was going to travel light on the outside. And so I had to walk through forgiveness and letting go of the stuff that I was battling on the inside. So we began to do that. And from that, I started doing this 10,000 steps thing. I've been doing 10,000 steps a day for 635 days now straight, working out, kept the weight off, feeling good about myself, feeling healthier now at 50 than I've ever felt. And people now are texting me, they're messaging me, and they're saying, "Man, I got my 10,000 in." They're seeing the transformation in my life based on the actions, Lord willing, versus me telling them. So many people have these epiphanies these days: follow me, health coach or whatever. To me, I wanted to keep it up for a good amount of time to make it lifestyle. And that was one of the biggest lessons I heard. And I'll close that part with this, is I ran into a friend of mine. He's an ultra athlete. He looked at me about 6 months after all this change happened. He says, 2 things I'm going to tell you. Words of advice: get yourself a pair of Brooks running shoes and keep it up for a year so it becomes lifestyle. So I began to set goals, because when goals become lifestyle, they're no longer something you have to do. There's something you want to do. And so that's
Yeah.
where I'm at. That's my story. And that's where I'm moving in life, and starting to work with men and helping them get unstuck.
That's really, really powerful. I like the quote that for the soul to grow, it requires subtraction and that submission. And I agree that it's interesting how physical ailments and weight problems are really related to internal things
Yeah.
emotionally, these limiting beliefs. And I completely agree that they are. Louise Hay, she wrote that book, You Can Heal Your Body. And she has all the different parts of the body and when you're having ailments, what that's related to
Yeah.
emotionally or belief wise. And I do believe that when we do that internal work, it does so much profound healing to our physical bodies. And it's amazing how the medical sector has no real connection to this, when it's just probably the most powerful and profound way that you can shift your health is doing that inside work, which is really hard to do.
100%. It takes a willingness and it takes a surrender to the process. And for me, it was a journey that was spiritual. I mean, really, at the end, to be able to forgive, I found a faith that became real to me. And but there's tremendous books. Alice Miller, psychotherapist, has written a lot about just childhood trauma and how that plays out as adults. And a lot of times, if I'm working with guys and we're yo-yoing, we're doing all these things. I mean, for me, it's right off the bat. It's like, who hurt you? Who hurt you? And began to hijack your identity. And we start establishing these frozen perceptions of ourselves, these self-limiting beliefs. So there's a lot of deconstructing and relearning, but it starts with just realizing I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I want to be willing to get surrendered to the process. And for me, that was God, and I found faith, and I found forgiveness, and I found freedom.
Yeah, it's really powerful when we go back to sometimes childhood experiences that are influencing us in our adulthood that
Yeah.
we're unaware of. So it's great that you're asking those questions,
Mhm.
especially to guys, because I know it's harder for them to have some of those conversations.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So you identified as a mentor leader. So I
Mhm.
wanted to ask, why is mentorship so important?
I think for me, it's a couple things. First off, it's stewardship of life. I think we all have something valuable to deposit into this world, into others. Mentoring, younger folks. I mean, I've been in this group of these 3 young guys for the last 3 years. They're mentoring me, and something that, from parenting, and something that I've stuck with me over the years when it comes to mentoring and parenting even as well. We hear it along the lines of just election time and politicians. What kind of world are we going to leave our children? And for me, for years ago, it was flipped over and asking the question, well, what kind of children are we going to leave our world? And to me, that's the most important question. And what we, good, bad, or indifferent, from the mistakes we've made, from the successes we've experienced, we all have something valuable to deposit into the next generation. It's legacy, but I believe it's also stewardship of this life that we're giving, because it's a gift, and it's a blink. So those are the things at the very core of why it's important to me. And it makes me, boy, when I'm giving back and I'm mentoring, quite frankly, they're the ones mentoring me. I become richer because of it.
Yeah, well, and it feels really good to give back and to share your experience and help people sometimes avoid things that they don't need to experience because they've learned from a mentor.
Mhm.
It's really powerful. I agree when I'm mentoring, my mentees teach me so much because it's a different perspective and
Yeah.
the experiences that they're facing are different sometimes than ours, but we have similarities. And so you learn this different kind of richness and depth by giving back and building those beautiful connections.
And I think it's an opportunity as well. And just as we get, for me, people around my age group and 50 below, and a lot of times you can look at millennials, those millennials. I mean, and we just complain, we get so fired up and frustrated about it. Well, why don't you go seek out some millennials and hang out with them? Get to know them, because I'll tell you what they're looking for. They're looking for folks like us to step up and move past the frozen perceptions and the things that we see and just invest in them. They are looking to be led or to taught, to be poured into. They want it, you know? And it's there's this beauty that can come from that. My therapist once says is that emotion knows not logic and logic knows not emotion, but together they equal wisdom. Sometimes we get very emotional, we can be very logical. Let's bring it together. Let's humble ourselves and let's give back. Let's deposit into that next. Let's make an investment into this world by depositing into the future.
Yeah, I think that oftentimes the people or groups that trigger us the most are where we can learn the most. And so if you find the millennials frustrating, I would encourage you to create some friendships or mentorship capabilities with
Yeah.
millennials, because you're going to learn the most from those groups that are frustrating or triggering you, because typically things that frustrate or trigger us, it's a way for us to look in the mirror and realize that we haven't improved our own beliefs or problems in that area. So that's just my tip for today.
I think it's a great tip and something we should do. One of the notes I had is just, I mean, it's gaining, you're growing in life and you're humbling yourself and you're learning, and we all have something to teach each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So how do you give back to future generations or to your community?
Well, I mean, first and foremost for me right now is family. I just was recently remarried, and you can see the picture on the wall of my three stepsons and stepdaughter, and I have a daughter in Texas. And you know, giving back to future generations starts at home, and it starts with my actions. It starts with me walking in my purpose, affirmation, encouraging, loving, and just being my best, bringing my best to every single day for them, to be an example. To in this case here specifically, more than anything else I can do is to show them a man that absolutely loves and adores and cherishes their mom. That is the number one thing that I can be doing right now to give back to future generations, is in my own household and how I treat these young boys as mom. That I'm head over heels for her, and I cherish her and adore her, and I love them. I think that's the first thing, just showing that respect and honor and love. But also just being involved. I mean, doing this group of these guys, it's been really fun. I mean, we've been meeting every week for the last 3 years, going through a series on identity right now. They're like, we went through it, we love it. They're like, hey, let's do this on a different night and let's invite all of our friends. So we got all these guys now from Hawaii, all these places on Monday nights. We're watching these videos together and we're talking. That stuff, and it's not a lot of stuff that I'm like, hey, everybody, look at me. I'm doing all this mentoring, whatever. No, just doing my thing. It's not about look at me. It's just about just doing my part, getting in the trenches and putting myself out there and grow. I've been very active with my church. I'm active with nonprofit organizations, the Reelect campaign here in town for our mayor. Giving back to my old high school. I've been the public address announcer for the baseball team at my old high school. Didn't have ball this year. That was tough, but that's been fun. Just using your gifts to give back and just to walk in your purpose, anchored in that contentment.
Yeah, I love that on so many levels. I agree that we can become kind of grandiose in how we're going to change the world and have
Yeah.
that legacy impact. And it really is quite simple when you break it down. It's, being the person you want to be with your family and being there for them, and then having that community involvement. It's just one person at a time, and you have that ripple effect. The biggest riches in life are in small circles with
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
That's where you build that intimacy and that connection. It's not selling to the masses or sharing on social media. It's
Yeah.
really these deep conversations and connections that you're building in small circles. So I love that. That's beautiful.
Well, and that's that James Clear quote from earlier: success is the product of daily habits, not once in a lifetime transformation. And so many of us right now in this big pivot we're in are just swinging for the bleachers. Just stay the course.
Yeah.
We joked around about 2020 being a year of vision. Who knew that we were going to have to take our eyeballs and turn them on ourselves and really look within and to find ourselves and to just stay the course, seek to find out who you are and embrace that and walk in it. Rinse and repeat daily. Keep moving forward.
And I know the book, The One Thing, I love how he says it's really about taking one step at a time. And if you
Yeah.
just grew 1% closer to your
Yes.
long-term goals every day, each year you would grow 365%. It's really that simple.
Yep.
But that does take the power of habit and being consistent and showing up and not constantly pivoting. That's the other problem so
Yeah.
many people I speak with struggle with is too much pivoting. Like,
That's right. Yeah,
do a pivot and stick with it.
you're pivoting yourself, right? It's like, I don't even know where I'm at now. Yeah, again,
Exactly.
been there, done that. Bought the T-shirt, by the way. But yes.
Yeah. So, all right. Can you share one of your most inspiring stories
Wow. That
tied
was,
to a mentorship? Yes.
yeah. That's something that's been something that I've thought long, and it's always harder to think about this about yourself, right, than others. And I think for me, it's just something that's really happening right now as we're recording this. I live in Portland, Oregon, and obviously Portland is all over the news with a lot of protests and things going on downtown. And this is something that's been going on with many years, and too long. And the racial tensions and divide. And there's these two young men, friend of mine, Lamont. He's a dear, dear, dear African American brother of mine, and then Ray, and they are just dear friends of mine, and they have a heart for music and bringing people together. And a couple of years ago, I'd shared with them and just had the opportunity. They call me mentor. I just feel uncomfortable calling myself a mentor. I just want to live life and just love people, love God, love others, love self. And I brought them together. I just was driving up and down the highway in 2015, and there was a lot of just continued racial divide and just hurt and pain and just years. And I was feeling so heavy. And I was remembering a conversation that I had once with the vice mayor of Kigali, Rwanda. Rwanda in the early 90s had experienced the horrors of genocide. 1 million people were killed in 90 days, a neighbor against neighbor. And we were doing a project at the time called Rock Rwanda. It was a musical project to raise awareness. And she said, I want you to bring Rock Rwanda to Kigali, to the heart of Rwanda, and we want to do it every single week. Because when we can sing together, our differences, and dance together, our differences can begin to melt away and we can begin to heal.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, what's the one thing that we're not doing? We're not singing and dancing together and what I believe, just that aspect of worship together. And I just pulled these two guys together. One was a gospel singer and gospel choir, and the other one's just a promoter and just loves the young guys. I says, you know what? We've got to somehow find a way to begin to sing together and bring people together. We're talking over each other. We're not listening. We've got to begin to sing together so that our differences can begin to melt away and we can begin to heal and get to that place of listening and just moving forward. And these guys took it and ran with it. And right now, in the heart of this time that we're in Portland, being all over the news and the headlines, and just the tragedies and the hurt and the pain, the frustration, the strife, all of the division. These guys went on last night and they streamed a live worship event with 3 others, and it was one of the most powerful things I'd ever seen. It's what we need here in Portland right now, what we need in this world of coming together. I just sat on the couch and watched these guys who we'd poured into over the years, taking that vision and making it happen, putting legs on it. And it just brought tears to my eyes. So that would be one that's speaking to me right now.
That is beautiful. Yeah, it is very powerful. Music is just such a simple way to bring people together, and it's so inspirational and uplifting. And when we can let our guard down and sing together and dance together, really powerful.
Yeah, and it was.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So why is giving back so important to you?
Well, I mean, to me, it's just it's part of, I mean, it's part of the life journey on planet Earth. I mean, it's like giving back. Love your neighbor, love your enemies. Giving back is it's a sense, to me personally, it's an act of worship and just giving back and serving others and giving back and not needing reciprocation. For years, I struggled with approval addiction. I needed approval because I had so much hurt in my life. I'm an encourager, so I would encourage so that I could receive things in return. How crazy. But then my heart changed. Literally, when I had gone to the ER and came out of it, went through forgiveness, and it was softened, and it got a new heart, and it found faith. And so to me, it's just giving back is centric to that. And again, it starts in the home. How am I serving and giving back to my family? How am I giving back and serving my wife in the way that she was made to be loved and wired, and in my community, and maybe serving parts of the community that are discounted, discarded. We look down upon. I just feel it's a part of my faith to give back. And too often we got to put down our swords and start washing feet. And it's just so critical to me. And you know what? It's not about reciprocation. It's not about, hey, look at me, I'm doing all these great things. Just do it.
Yeah.
Even more so, do it in a way that nobody's seeing you do it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Well, and it's simple. It could just be smiling at somebody,
Yes.
which is hard with a mask on. But anyways,
Yeah.
it could be just saying something kind to a complete stranger that looks like they're having a rough day. So it doesn't have to be big. It can be really, really small actions that have a really big ripple effect that you have no idea.
100%.
Yeah. Well, Gunnar, this has been really amazing. We're going to jump into our lightning round questions.
Okay. Let's see here.
So, what's your favorite book?
Okay, favorite book. Obviously, I've been talking a lot about my faith journey and such. I mean, I read the Bible every day. I wake up with my wife. We read the Bible. We pray. That by far is just informs just my heart and where I'm going. This year, I've been reading a lot of great books. I will say this real quickly. David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me really spoke to me this year. Just the crazy stuff he went through as a Navy SEAL and Army Ranger. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, his time in the Holocaust and the concentration camps was very powerful to me. So those are a few books.
Awesome. What networking or community group do you love most?
I just love being with the guys. I love being with the guys on my community group. Every Wednesday night, we go through our own little core group, and then we expand it to all of their friends. It's just so fun to be a part of it, and it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of it, and I grow. I'm all the richer because of it.
Yeah, I like that you're actually building your own community group. So if you're listening, you can do that yourself too.
We all have something to give.
Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you could share with others today?
What the best piece of advice that I could share of others today is every hill is not a hill worth dying on. That is something, and I alluded to this earlier, that sometimes we have to step back from ourselves to truly hear the other person. Lest we get lost in translation. I think a lot of the division we have is that we're not listening or we're not speaking to the other person the way they're wired, and we get lost in translation. So every hill is not a hill worth dying on. As I said earlier, emotion knows not logic, logic knows not emotion, but together they equal wisdom. Humble yourself, own your stuff, and meet people where they are.
Man, if we could just let our guard down and really listen, the world could be such a better place. So I hope people are tuning in and taking that advice to heart today. If you could share one message with the world, what would that be?
It would be that you matter.
I love that.
You are worth every breath you're gifted with. No matter what's happened to you, no matter what's been done to you, don't let that define you. You have a God-given identity within you. Believe in that. Find it. Mine it. Find it. Accept it. Embrace it. And walk in it. Be free. The sky is no longer the limit. You absolutely are worth it. You matter, you're valued, and you are loved.
And I know there are people that need
I'm
to
sorry, I'm pointing.
No, I love it. I mean, you're passionate about it, and I feel like the world needs to hear those words right now. I feel like a lot of people are not feeling that, and they're feeling alone and isolated, disconnected, unworthy. People are losing their jobs. So those are really great affirmations for people to own and reflect on and believe today. And my last question, what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
That my family would know that they were loved. I mean, it starts there. If my family, I get teary-eyed thinking about it. I mean, like that text message I got from my daughter, my wife, and my stepkids. They know that they are loved by me, not just in words, but just by actions and what they see in me. That's the legacy that I want to leave.
That's beautiful. I feel like if we all had that mantra, again, the world would be a better place because there would be less disharmony, less violence. There'd be so much more compassion, less dysfunction. And if we could heal families and home lives, imagine what the world would be like. It would be amazing. That's a beautiful
100%.
legacy. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Gunnar, this has been amazing. So much great wisdom. I can see why you're such an amazing mentor, even though you don't like to call yourself that.
So
Um,
nice.
so if you want to find out more about Gunnar or just follow him or connect with him, in the show notes, I'll have some links to his LinkedIn profile as well as some of his social media accounts. So feel free to reach out to Gunnar with any questions because his heart is all about mentorship. Thank you so much, Gunnar. This has been such a wonderful episode.
Well, thank you so much, Holly. It's been an absolute honor to be with you and to be here on your podcast. And I just wish you just great success.
And me to you as well, and to your family.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining the show today. I hope you were inspired. More importantly, I hope you take action. What is one thing you can do in this moment that will inspire someone? Without action, nothing changes. Be the change you wish to see in the world. If this show truly inspired you, we ask that you share it through your network. Help us spread the light and inspiration in the world. I look forward to seeing you here next week.